When we last left off, Rachmaninoff decided to move to Dresden with his family in the hopes that he would have more time to dedicate to his own compositions and works. One of the first to be told of the Rachmaninoff's new home in Dresden was Morozov. On November the 9th, 1906, Rachmaninoff wrote that he was absolutely enchanted by the Garten Villa, as they would call it in Dresden. He had a few works in mind, all to be kept secret, two of which were a symphony that could wipe away the stain of his first and a piano sonata. He writes again to Morozov on January 1907. Recently I heard from Slonov that he read in some paper that I had finished a symphony. As you also may have heard something about this, I want to say a few words on the subject. A month ago or more, I really did finish a symphony, but to this must be added the phrase "in draft." I have not announced it yet to the world because I want to first complete its final writing. While I was planning to put it in clean form, it became terribly boring and repulsive to me, so I threw it aside and took up something else. Thus, the world would not have known yet about my work if it hadn't been for Siloti, who came here and pulled out of me everything I have and everything that I am going to have. I told him that I will have a symphony. That's how I've already received an invitation to conduct it next season, and news of this symphony has flown everywhere. I can tell you privately that I am displeased with it, but that it will be, though not before autumn, as I shall not begin its orchestration until summer. He was of course referring to his second symphony. More news to Morozov went on April the 13th. Now for compositions. I've worked here for 5 months and 5 days. In this time I've done a lot, but unfortunately I finished nothing. Nothing is in final shape. As for the quality of all these things, I must say that the worst of all is that when I get it written and then correct my first symphony, I give my solemn word, no more symphonies. Curse them. I don't know how to write them, but mainly I don't want to. My second work is slightly better than the first, but still it is dubious in quality. In early May, he writes, I work all day and bum with fire. I am terribly behind in my work. Now I'm completing a piano sonata. Yesterday I finished writing the second movement. Only the last movement is left to do, but I don't know if I can finish it before going to Paris. Probably not. This work is not a secret. 2 days ago I played a sonata for Riesemann, and he doesn't seem to like it. Generally, I've begun to notice that no matter what I write lately, nobody likes it. And I myself often wonder, maybe it is all nonsense. The sonata is certainly wild and interminable. I think it takes about 45 minutes. I was lured into this length by its guiding idea. Nobody will ever play this composition. It's too difficult and long and possibly, and this is the most important, too dubious musically. At one time I wanted to make a symphony out of this sonata, but this seemed impossible because of the purely pianistic style in which it is written. They soon did go to Paris to honor the previously mentioned invitation. Scriabin made, however, an impression on Rimsky-Korsakov when he listened in Paris along with Rachmaninoff, Glazunov, Blumenfeld and Hoffmann to Scriabin playing his poem of ecstasy. Rimsky-Korsakov remarked, only half-jokingly, "Isn't he losing his mind, perhaps?" The moment his Paris task was completed at the end of May, Rachmaninoff hurried back to Russia to join his family. Stopping in Moscow on the way to Ivanovka estate, he tried out one of the Dresden works on his most trusted friends. They were invited to Wilshaw's apartment to hear Rachmaninoff play his piano sonata in D minor, less than a month old. The impression made on one of them was such that, as he says, I was afterwards impelled to write to its author asking whether it was being printed and how soon one can expect it to be available. On June the 21st of that year, Rachmaninoff had his second son, which turned out to be a daughter. The little girl has behaved rather decently for the first 3 days of her life. She sleeps far more than Irina did in the beginning and cries less. But when she does cry, she does so in a voice of thunder. In general, my daughters have powerful voices. Natasha now feels perfectly well. We're naming the little girl Tatiana. It is by this time that the second symphony was soon to be completed. His New Year's Eve message in 1907 to Morozov from Dresden showed good spirits. For 4 days now I've done nothing. All the family is visiting us. They leave the day after tomorrow, and happy as I am to have them here, I'll be glad to get back to work if the symphony is to be finished on time. I was stopped in about the middle of the fourth movement. I have 12 more days to complete the writing. This is the absolute limit and time is short. I wrote it in approximately these periods. First movement, 3 months. Second movement, 3.5 weeks. Third movement, 2 weeks. Finale, about 4 weeks. This means 2 months for the last 3 movements and 3 more months for the first. I should add too that the first movement was written in Russia. Now I have to play some more. Soon I play in Berlin. At the end of January I go to Warsaw, Petersburg and Moscow, where I'll arrive at January the 29th. The Berlin concert was an all-Russian program and Rachmaninoff played his second concerto. In St. Petersburg, Rachmaninoff conducted one of the Siloti concerts on January the 26th, with Siloti playing the Greek concerto. For Rachmaninoff, this concert's greatest importance was that it included the first performance of his new symphony, his second. Yuli Engel, a critic, wrote, "After a year and a half abroad, Rachmaninoff appears before the Moscow public as composer, conductor, and pianist, and Rachmaninoff is worth an entire concert devoted to his works. Despite his 24 years, he is one of the most significant figures in the contemporary music world, a worthy successor to Tchaikovsky, if not the dimensions of his talent, of which it is too early to speak, then certainly in its concentration, sincerity, and subjective delicacy. Successor and not imitator, for he has already his own individuality. This was confirmed most impressively by the new E minor symphony. After listening with unflagging attention to its 4 movements, one notes with surprise that the hands of the watch have moved 65 minutes forward. This may be slightly overlong for the general audience, but how fresh, how beautiful it is. It was during this time and because he had many requests for it to be played that he decided to revisit and revise his first concerto. In a letter written to Morozov in this period, he laments about the state of this first concerto and how he barely finished his piano sonata at the end of the letter, saying, "Last night I heard a beautiful performance of Beethoven's 9th Symphony. Nobody will ever write anything better than this symphony." Now, we have to understand that back then, composers didn't really have any way of listening to what they've written except by when the orchestra played the work, or when they were proofreading the music. This proofreading was a tedious task for something like a symphony. Imagine having to take all the parts, all the separate parts together, look over them to make sure that there are no mistakes, no minor notes which were badly transcribed or written. For the second symphony, for example, in a later letter to Morozov, Rachmaninoff complained that the whole process took weeks. The Glinka Award announcement in December brought the news to Dresden that Rachmaninoff's second symphony had won the symphonic prize of 1,000 rubles. But this seems to have increased the composer's anguish over his inactivity, and it showed in each letter he wrote. When he wrote to Slonov on New Year's Day, this sometimes depressing holiday had unusually severe effects on him. "I've aged terribly, and I am very tired and terribly afraid that I'll soon go to the devil." Yet, considering the work Rachmaninoff was to do in the next 3 months, this depression may have been a symptom that something was stirring. From January through March, he composed the orchestral poem whose subject he had sought for 2 years, The Isle of the Dead. It was a friend of Rachmaninoff who first suggested the Böcklin painting as the subject of symphonic poem, and Rachmaninoff's first acquaintance with the painting through a reproduction scene in Paris in the summer of 1907 made a stronger impression on him than did any of the several versions of the painting that he later saw in Berlin or Leipzig. "I was not much moved by the color of the painting. If I had seen the original first, I might not have composed my Isle of the Dead. I like the picture best in black and white." Fortunately, Rachmaninoff was less secretive about this source for his symphonic poem than he was for other works that came into being from outside strictly musical sources. He once said of the Isle, "There must be something definite before my mind to convey a definite impression, or these ideas refuse to appear." And he gave another glimpse into his method when he said on another occasion, "When composing, I find it of great help to have in mind a book just recently read, or a beautiful picture, or a poem. Sometimes a definite story is kept in mind, which I try to convert into tones without disclosing the source of my inspiration. The family left Dresden in April, and it was many years before they found themselves again in that quiet city. Moscow put the composer to work at once as a conductor. On April the 18th, he conducted the first performance of The Isle of the Dead. While in St. Petersburg, he received a new honor and a new responsibility. The Princess Helene of Saxe-Altenburg had been appointed president of the Imperial Russian Musical Society, and in turn, she appointed Rachmaninoff as a vice president to examine and correct the purely musical interests of the society, including provincial colleges maintained by society funds. Rachmaninoff accepted this post on the condition that his tasks should be real and not honorary. In Ivanovka, Rachmaninoff began a new work, a concerto that, in spite of his postponed American tour, was to have its premiere in New York. In a letter written in 1935, Rachmaninoff told something of the birth of this new concerto's first theme. It was borrowed neither from folk song forms nor from church sources. It simply wrote itself. If I had any plans to composing this theme, I was thinking only of sound. I wanted to sing the melody on the piano as a singer would sing it, and to find a suitable orchestral accompaniment, or rather one that would not muffle the singing. And he went on to explain that his treatment showed no wish to impart a liturgical character to this theme. By July the 15th, it seemed possible that American audiences would be the first to hear this new work dedicated to Joseph Hoffman. Soon after, Rachmaninoff left for his first American tour. He practiced the piano part of the new work on the way, using the first time a silent piano on board the ship. The American tour, in pressure and haste, was all that Rachmaninoff dreaded it would be. In addition to the few recitals he had planned, arrangements were made for him to appear as a soloist with the Boston Symphony, with the New York Symphony Orchestra for the premiere of the third concerto, with the Philadelphia Orchestra, and with the New York Philharmonic under Gustav Mahler. Some additional appearances were fitted in as the tour progressed, and his name gathered commercial weight. Rachmaninoff's recital program was usually composed of his first sonata, pieces from opus number 3 and 10, and a group of preludes, including the obligatory C-sharp minor, of which a typical press release of the period boasted, "In academic Berlin, it has been said, if one strolls through the lodging houses quarters on a summer evening, the tremendous chords of the Rachmaninoff prelude can be heard pealing forth from every open window." The second concerto seemed to have had a bad start in America. All critics dismissed it, following the lead of Philip Hale, who wrote in his program note for the Boston Symphony's first performance of the work. The concerto is of uneven worth. The first movement is labored and has little marked character. It might have been written by any German, technically well-trained, who was acquainted with the music of Tchaikovsky. Before leaving New York on November the 14th, Rachmaninoff was visited by an interviewer from the Delineator, who plied with him questions about the prelude. Granting that its fame made it possible for him to come to America, Rachmaninoff went on to say, "Under the circumstances, I should be thankful, I suppose, that I wrote the composition. But I am undecided whether my oversight in neglecting to secure international copyright for it was altogether fortunate for me. Had I copyrighted it, I might have had wealth as well as fame from it. And again, I might have achieved neither. I took the precaution to have the 10 preludes of opus number 23 copyrighted by a German publisher. I think them far better music than my first prelude, but the public has shown no disposition to share my belief. I cannot tell whether my judgment is at fault or whether the existence of that copyright has acted as a blight on their popularity. Consequently, it will always be an open question with me whether intrinsic merit or absence of copyright is responsible for the success of my earlier work." On Sunday afternoon, November the 28th, in New York, he gave the first performance anywhere of the third concerto. The concert was repeated on the evening of November the 30th. The critic of The Sun wrote of this new concerto, "Sound, reasonable music this, though not a great nor memorable proclamation." Rachmaninoff must have sent many unhappy letters home from his American tour, but few have been preserved. One of these is to his young cousin, written at the Hotel Netherland in New York on December the 12th, 1909. You were very kind to write to me. Your letters make me happy. You know, in this accursed country, where you're surrounded by nothing but Americans and their business, they are forever clutching you from all sides and driving you on. It is terribly pleasant to receive the letter from a Russian girl, and from such a sweet Russian girl as you. Thank you. But I couldn't manage an immediate reply. I'm very busy and very tired. Here is my perpetual prayer. God give me strength and patience. Everyone treats me nicely and kindly, but I am horribly bored with it all, and I feel that my character has been quite spoiled here. Sometimes I even grow angry as the devil, and I have 2 more months here. Rehearsals began for the performance that Rachmaninoff had most anticipated, the New York Philharmonic's performance on January the 16th of the new concerto under Gustav Mahler. After a rehearsal of the Berlioz Symphony Fantastique that dazzled Rachmaninoff with Mahler's conducting power, his concerto was rehearsed. Though the rehearsal was scheduled to end at 12:30, we played and played far beyond this hour, and when Mahler announced that the first movement would be rehearsed again, I expected some protest or scene from the musicians. But I did not notice a single sign of annoyance. The orchestra played the first movement with a keen or perhaps even closer application than the previous time. Before his departure, contracts were offered to him to return to America in the following season, but he declined all proposals. His reasons appear in an interview he gave to Russia magazine on his return. America was a strain. Imagine giving an almost daily concert for 3 whole months. I played only my own works. The success was great. They forced me to play as many as 7 encores, which is quite a lot for that audience. The audiences were astonishingly cold, spoiled by the tours of first-class artists and forever looking for novelty, for something they have never heard before. Local papers were obliged to note the number of times you are recalled to the stage, and the public regards this as a yardstick of your talent. Immediately after returning to Russia, he participated in a few concerts where he played both his Second Symphony and Second Concerto, but also his new Third Concerto. A critic wrote, "This new concerto mirrored the best sides of his creative power, sincerity, simplicity, and clarity of musical thought. It has a freshness of inspiration that doesn't aspire to the discovery of new paths. It has a sharp and laconic form as well as simple and brilliant orchestration, qualities that will secure both outer success and enduring love by musicians and public alike for this new composition." It was about the time of his return from America that the mysterious activities of the White Lilacs Lady began. Rachmaninoff could give no concert or recital without a bouquet of white lilacs among the floral tributes. Bouquets of white lilacs were also delivered on every birthday, every saint day, and if he appeared to be abroad on these dates, the white lilacs would just as surely arrive at his hotel or the compartment of his train. The notes accompanying this tribute were always brief and tender, congratulating him on his birthday or wishing him success in the concert, and the only signature was the Russian initials of White Lilacs. The song Lilacs in Opus 21 appears to have inspired this extraordinary labor of love. Rachmaninoff appreciated the lady's incognito as deeply as the simple, warm words of her notes, though sometimes the gift was a little flamboyant, especially when the everlasting white lilacs arrived on schedule in the depth of winter. Not only did bouquets, wreaths, and other ornamental florists' designs arrive with these flowers, but the gift took other forms, such as an ebony conductor's baton engraved with a design of white lilacs and Rachmaninoff's initials. The giver's identity remained hidden from the composers and all the members of his family. He soon started working on his summer composition. This was his first large religious work consisting of 20 numbers for a 4-part chorus, the Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom. During August and September, he finished the little piano pieces, 13 preludes for opus number 32, and departed on his European concert tour. Rachmaninoff was back in Moscow in time to hear the first public performance of the liturgy sung by the choir of the Synod School on November the 25th. Then there was the Jubilee concert of the Russian Musical Society conducted by Emil Cooper and dedicated to three great graduates of the Moscow Conservatory, Taneyev, Rachmaninoff, and Scriabin. Rachmaninoff played his third concerto. The concert was noticeable chiefly for the opportunity given to critics to compare Rachmaninoff and Scriabin, represented by his third symphony. They attached Rachmaninoff to Tchaikovsky and Scriabin to Chopin and Wagner. During summer at Ivanovka, the muse did not arrive until mid-August, and thereupon Rachmaninoff wrote 9 etude tableaux for the piano. Before turning them over to the printer, he removed 3, 2 of which he put away in his desk. When a friend submitted a list of Rachmaninoff's compositions for him to check, the composer crossed out these 2 in C minor and D minor and wrote in the margin, "The deleted ones lie in my desk. They will not be published." Rachmaninoff came to London this autumn, again with his own compositions. Following a recital at the London Ballet Concerts, he gave London its first hearing of the third concerto, on which the Times commented, "It is more than usually difficult to judge on the actual value of this remarkable work from its first hearing, because it is almost impossible to dissociate the music from the extraordinary glamour cast upon it by the magical piano playing of the composer. He is one of the very few pianists, and probably the chief among them, who have succeeded in adding types of effects to the resources of the piano which are not the natural outcome of Liszt and his school. The whole of his concerto illustrates these contributions in a striking way. The climaxes were built with wonderful power, but the musical ideas from which they spring are also distinctive." The first Moscow concert of the season confounded the critics who enjoyed pitting Rachmaninoff and Scriabin against each other. As conductor for a group of the Philharmonic Society's concerts, Rachmaninoff engaged Scriabin as soloist for his first concert on December the 10th. The program included Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony, Don Juan by Strauss, and Scriabin's Piano Concerto, and the single-purpose performance of the concerto by pianist and orchestra downed forever the rumor of rivalry.